It's nuts here. Welcome. Welcome to a meeting of the Boston Region Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'm David Muller, represent Secretary Monica Tibbetts Nuts here. Could we please call the roll? Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will call the roll. MassDOT Seat 1.
That's David Muller. I'm here.
MassDOT Seat 2.
John Bouchard, representing Administrator Gulliver, here.
Thank you. MassDOT Highway Division.
John Romano, MassDOT Highway Division,
MBTA.
here. Sandy Johnston, MBTA.
Massport. Thank you. MAPC.
Good morning, Eric Barassa with MAPC.
Good morning. MBTA Advisory Board. Next, calling on the Advisory Council.
Advisory Council Diggins here.
Thank you, Len. City of Boston BTD.
This is Jen Rowe representing the City of Boston and Mayor Michelle Wu.
City of Boston BPDA.
He's on Zoom.
Again, calling on Zoom potentially for City of Boston BPDA. I will return. At large, City of Everett.
Jay Monty, representing Mayor DeMaria and the City of Everett.
At large, City of Newton.
David Kozas, representing Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller in the City of Newton.
At large town of Arlington.
Good morning. John Alessi, representing Select Board Chair Eric Helmuth and the town of Arlington.
Good morning. At large town of Brookline.
Good morning. Erin Chute, representing Select Board Chair Bernard Green for the town of Brookline.
Good morning. Intercore Committee, City of Somerville.
Good morning, Tom Bent, City of Somerville, representing Mayor Katiana Ballantyne and the Intercore.
Good morning. Minuteman Advisory Group on Interlocal Coordination, Town of Acton.
Good morning, Kristen Guichard, representing Acton Select Board Chair Jim Snyder Grant for the Magic Subregion.
Good morning. Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham.
Dennis Giambetti, representing Metro West, and Mayor Charles Ziski.
North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly. North Suburban Planning Council, Town of Burlington. South Shore Coalition, Town of Hull. Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, Town of Rentham.
Hi, Rachel Benson, representing Joe Botash, Select Board Chair for the SWAP region.
Thank you. Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Norwood.
Good morning, Tom O'Rourke from the town of Norwood, representing the Trek subregion.
I'd like to call Federal Highway Administration. Federal Transit Administration.
Kirsty Hostetter, representing FTA Region 1.
Is there anyone on Zoom that I have not called? That is the roll. Back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Chair's report. I just have one quick item. As most of you probably know, the Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods grants were announced. MassDOT received a grant of $335.4 million for the Alston Intermodal project. That's great news. We asked for 500, but we got 335. So we will be looking for other sources to fund the 165, and those sources may include federal formula funds, which may entail a discussion at this table. We're not ready to have it yet, but that's just a commercial. We'd also like to congratulate the City of Lynn, who got $561,000 under RCN, and the City of Everett, who got $1.2 million. Any questions on that? Seeing none, that's it for my chair's report. Tegan, Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be relatively brief today, but I do want to start with just two important staffing updates, which are two retirements I'd like to announce on our staff. So if you could go to the next slide. So I'm going to look at my notes so I don't mess this up because retirements are very important. So bear with me one moment. So first of all, if you go to the next slide, I wanted to mention that Ben Krepp, who's a chief data scientist with the agency, will be retiring on April 10th. He started his career with us more than 15 years ago, and spent about half of those as a manager. He's been a really strong advocate at CTPS for leveraging open source solutions and adopting industry best practices in terms of data management. And he's also championed the use of data sets like INRIX and led the development of a number of dashboard applications, which I know this board's been very fond of, including the recent update to the BikePed database application and the new performance-based planning and programming dashboard. And then also in the data management team, next slide, we have Kathy Jacob, and also an almost 30-year veteran with CTPS who will be retiring in early May. She was one of the first GIS specialists working with Mass DOT on the road inventory, and then came to CTPS in 1996. And she was a trailblazer at the time in geocoding crash data and has since played a key role in developing the rail inventory application. So she's been our go-to person for accessing crash, pavement, bridge, rail, and signal data, and has been helping us use that as insight into our planning work. So my brief descriptions really don't do their careers justice. They are immense contributors to making the staff to the Boston Region MPO the real kind of technical experts and trailblazers that we've been known to be over the number of years. So they are a big loss for our agency in terms of institutional knowledge, but also just in terms of history and culture with the agency. So if you know them, please reach out and wish them a happy retirement. And if you don't, you also should feel free to reach out and wish them a happy retirement because they've contributed a lot to this MPO over their years with the agency. Thank you. Next slide. So today's agenda is actually relatively simple, other than voting on the minutes. Our discussion today is really focused on the MPO's target portion. The target funds are the funds that are allocated to the MPO to go through your own selection and prioritization process. So the target portion of the upcoming new 25 to 29 Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. So we have a preliminary scenario for the programming of those funds over the next 5 years. And we'll be asking you to discuss that scenario and make decisions on dealing with both surpluses and deficits in the years that are in that 5-year TIP. And then next slide. So the next meeting will also be hybrid like this one. So you'll be able to join us in person at the 10 Park Plaza State Transportation Board room where we are right now with some refreshments. And that will be the continuation of that discussion of the target funding scenario. We do need you all, we ask you all to make a decision on the final scenario at that meeting next time so that we can wrap up that part of the TIP. And then, surprise, next slide. We are asking, surprise, we're adding another meeting in April. We need to hold, we are asking to hold another meeting in April. This is a very busy time of year. And another part of the conversation we need to have right now is to go through the Mass DOT and MBTA, as well as the RTA capital projects. Those are the projects outside of the target funds that also are included in the 5-year TIP that this board needs to approve. So if you all could please hold April 11th, which is the following Thursday after the 4th, same time, 10 a.m. That one will be fully virtual. That would be wonderful. And please join us for that conversation. And then next slide, please. We will still hold the already planned April 18th meeting 1 week later again. It will again be fully virtual. And that will be when we will ask the board to vote the full TIP out for public comment, including all of those projects, both the target funds as well as the other projects and capital programs presented by the other agencies. There will be a few other items on that agenda as well. But that should give you the picture of the upcoming month. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and that is my full report.
Thank you, Tegan. Any questions for Tegan? Seeing none, next item on the agenda is public comment. And as always, as our practice, we will take elected officials first. I will call on senators and representatives and mayors, and then we will just go to sign-ups. Senator Will Brownsberger.
Good morning. I'm Will Brownsberger, State Senator for the Suffolk and Middlesex District, which is Fenway, Alston, Brighton, Watertown, Belmont, and West Cambridge. And I'm here with Roy Epstein, who's the chair of the Board of Selectmen in Belmont. We're here in support of the Belmont Community Path Project, and Selectman Epstein will speak first.
Thank you, Will. Good morning, everybody. I'm Roy Epstein, the chair of the Belmont Select Board. I've been on the Select Board for 5 years. I've been involved with the community path planning in Belmont for that time and even before that. In fact, going way before that, this path has been under development or contemplation for maybe 20 years. We're at a wonderful moment where we've just had a successful 25% design hearing by Mass DOT. I believe the engineering issues have all been addressed and resolved. There were a number of abutter concerns that were raised over the years. I think they've all been addressed, and I can safely say now that there is overwhelming support in Belmont for this project. It will provide a very important service to Belmont and the region in two ways. One, it is one of the remaining missing links to complete the Mass Central Rail Trail, which actually starts way out in Northampton and will make its way to the Atlantic Ocean, but Belmont is one of the last gaps. This will fill in about half of that gap. It also provides a pedestrian tunnel under the MBTA tracks in Belmont, which is really a critical asset because, as you all know, if you've been in Belmont at rush hour, it's very difficult to get through because of the MBTA tracks. There's only 2 roads that cross the tracks, and the backup, particularly associated with the schools, is enormous. And this tunnel will be a direct access, basically, to the new Belmont Middle School and High School, allowing hundreds of students to get off the road and access schools by bike. So it will be a tremendous improvement for the town. But as part of this regional solution, it'll be a tremendous thing one day when you can get on your bike. And I look forward to riding the 100 miles to Northampton. So I would really urge you. I would really urge you to continue with the planning that I'm aware of, which is to have this in the TIP funding for 2026. I gather there was some, I would hope it's a hiccup. There was some talk the other day about moving this to 27, but I hope you will find a way to make it happen in 26, because I believe all of the issues that have been issues for many years have all been resolved, and it's really ready to move forward, and I look forward to your approval. Thank you.
Senator?
Thank you. Board Chair Epstein is one of many local officials who have spent enormous time and expended enormous political capital to bring this project to where it is, which is at a state of enormous municipal consensus. That consensus was most recently reflected in a most recent town meeting vote on another element of funding for it, which was about 220 to 20. So this is a project that's achieved after a lot of work, enormous local support. We've got good engineering team. We've got good collaboration with the MBTA and MassDOT. I want to thank MPO staff for figuring out how to, I believe, in what's before you today, to have this in the fiscal 26 TIP. I would greatly hope that you'll be able to support that. Just let me assure you that myself and Representative Rogers and every elected official serving Belmont are behind this project, and being behind it means not only showing up at a meeting like this, but being ready to dive in and solve problems as they emerge. If there's any hiccup whatsoever in the process between MassDOT, MBTA, the town, any new abutter issues, God forbid, we will solve those problems and keep this project on track. So I appreciate your consideration, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Senator. That concludes the people who are in person who have signed up to speak. So now I'm going to go to online, and then we'll come back to the room. If anybody wants to speak, you can raise your hand. First up is Dominic Pangallo, the mayor of the city of Salem. Mr. Mayor, whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. My name is Dominic Pengallo. I'm the mayor in Salem, Massachusetts. I want to start by thanking the members of the board for the thoughtfulness and consideration that you put into the work that you do. I know that there's a lot of demands, and it's not easy to make sure that they're all getting met as thoughtfully as you do. So I appreciate what you put into this. I'm here to speak specifically about the Boston Street project in the city of Salem, which is 609437. It's the project number. This project's been recommended to move to FY27, and we really just want to urge that the MPO not delay it any further beyond FY27. This would be the first major tip roadway project for the city since Canal Street, which wrapped up about 6 years ago, but started its journey over a decade ago. So it's been 10 years since we've had a major corridor project receive MPO funding in the city of Salem. We're getting to 75% design. We have strong momentum on that design, and we're ready as a community to move the project forward. To date, the city's invested just over 1.5 million of our own funds to advance the design to this point, and we anticipate expending another nearly 600,000 to get to the final design. This is a complete streets project in an environmental justice community that's going to enhance the conditions on one of our 6 primary entry corridors, and the one that connects our city with Route 128. It meets our own multimodal and complete streets goals and policies and ties directly into 2 major state projects on Route 107 Highland Avenue and on Bridge Street. But the changes of this project they're going to bring to our community are about more than just a better roadway and bicycle and sidewalk conditions. It's reconstruction of a deteriorated road surface and thousands of feet of new shared use paths and sidewalk level separated bike lanes. It also includes modifications to signal improvements at 6 intersections, including one of our highest crash intersections in the city, and reconstruction of emergency signals at one of our 4 fire stations, which is also the station that serves the largest geographic part of the city. So making effective traffic control in front of it really essential to public safety for our community. It'll create new accessibility for the corridor, relocate utilities, update some failing drainage, and plant 124 new trees to help us meet our urban canopy goals. And lastly, and I think importantly, it constitutes over a fifth of what will ultimately be 4.2 miles of continuous separated bicycle facilities and accessible pedestrian routes that are critical to our shared street network here in the city of Salem. It provides an essential connection for major and growing residential neighborhoods in the Glover Hollow neighborhood to our commuter rail station, Salem Hospital, our senior center, our high school, our middle school, and one of our elementary schools, and lots of commercial businesses along the corridor. So in short, we see critical connections to healthcare, public services, public transit, and places of employment in this project. We've waited a long time for this to move forward. As I mentioned, design's advancing to 75%. We are engaging in the right-of-way process for more than 125 impacted properties, which is one of the reasons the project was moved from 26 to 27. And we recognize that there are time and cost challenges imposed by that volume of right-of-way work. So, and that's what prompted the FY27 recommendation. And despite that, the city's ready for this project to move forward. We're confident it's going to be a substantial improvement, not just for Salem, but for the entire North Shore region as a critical corridor. So we urge you to really keep this project on track for 2027 and the planned timetable. And thank you again for your time, your work, and your dedication to our community and our Commonwealth's infrastructure and our cities and towns.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I go on, David, just so you know, Jim Fitzgerald has entered the Zoom link, so just make sure you're calling him from going forward. All right. Next up is Patrice Garvin.
Thank you, everyone. Just wanted to echo the comments of Senator Will Brownsberger and Chair Roy Epstein in their comments before on the Belmont Community Path. I just wanted to speak today and thank the MPO for the continuing efforts to move this path forward. I can speak to the 6 years that I've been the town administrator in Belmont. The amount of support with this project has only grown. We have a tremendous amount of support within the community as well as town meeting. We dedicated approximately 1.5 million in design funds just for phase 1 of this path. There is a phase 2 that's also being planned and being brought to town meeting for funding as well. It will connect critical links within the community for a new library that the town is engaging in building, schools, playing fields, economic centers for residents and pedestrians. So it's It's a really exciting project for the town of Belmont, and I want to thank you as you consider this project moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garvin. Next is Pam Helenek.
Hello, I'm Pam Helenek. I'm the project lead for the Mass Central Rail Trail development in Hudson. And I want to reiterate a few things Christina Johnson said about this project in the past. Hudson puts a very high priority on rail trails, and we're currently working in collaboration with our Bike and Pedestrian Committee on a pre-25% design study, which was financed by a Mass Trails grant from DCR and with matching funds from our Community Preservation Committee and our Downtown Business Improvement District. And we're lucky in that the first section of the Mass Central Rail Trail in Hudson from the Sudbury border to the intersection with our existing Assabet River Rail Trail will be completed by DCR as part of the Eversource Sudbury Hudson Transmission Line project. And our goal is to continue this regional trail, which will eventually connect Boston to Northampton through the rest of Hudson to the Berlin line. The project we're asking the TIP to consider is 100% design of the next mile of trail from the intersection of the MCRT and the existing Assabet River Rail Trail to our very popular downtown. And this would provide safe off-road access to our downtown restaurants and shops that have become a very desirable destination for a lot of communities. And not only would we have this safe off-road access from the eastern part of Hudson, but to all the communities along the Mass Central Rail Trail. Hudson hasn't asked the TIP for funding in a number of years, but we're very excited to hear about the new design grants, and we really hoped to see our project receive the design funding. Our Community Preservation Commission has approved $200,000 in matching funds if the MPO selects our project for the grant. And there's a lot of interest and support in the town, but no money in our very tight town budget to advance the project ourselves. So we greatly appreciate your consideration of our project. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Helenek. Next up is, excuse me, Charles Cray.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Charles Cray, Transportation Planner with the City of Cambridge. We just want to thank the MPO for considering us for design funding for this particular project. The city is excited about the recent RCN announcement of a $2.4 million grant award for the design of a dedicated pedestrian and bicycle crossing of the MBTA Fitchburg commuter rail line in North Cambridge. We think that the RCN award may cover the full cost of design. And although we're not out to bid yet, we'd like to ask the MPO to consider putting us on the out years for construction funding. The preliminary cost estimate for the bridge, multi-use path approaches, associated pathways, lighting, drainage, landscaping, and various amenities like fencing and bike parking, drinking fountains, et cetera, is in the range of approximately $16 million. And this safe and accessible bridge crossing will connect the Ringe Avenue residential area, which is in an EJ block group, to Cambridge's largest park and open space and a variety of regional multi-use path networks. So we feel that we have broad support. We're very excited for the project, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cray. Next up is Allie Rule, City of Quincy.
Good morning. I'm Allie Rule. I'm the traffic engineer for the City of Quincy. I'm here today representing the Honorable Mayor Thomas P. Koch here in Quincy for the intersection improvements at Willard Street and Raschuti Drive project. The project would provide significant safety improvements to an intersection that's a high crash intersection on the Highway Safety Improvement Program list. The expected advertisement date for the project is August of 2025, which falls in federal fiscal 2025. It could be expedited by a shortened DOT review periods, which is something the district has reached out and offered. So there's cross-jurisdictional support to accelerate this project to fit it into federal fiscal 25. Currently, we've just received comment back on 75% design. We're planning to submit 100% design midsummer and PS&E plans this coming fall to be ready for the advertisement date that was noted for summer of 2025. This project also aligns with the MPO's goals to create multimodal connections. The project includes a bidirectional cycle track that crosses through the I-93 barrier. So aligning with the Boston to Blue Hills initiative and other regional initiatives to improve multimodal connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rule. Next up is Cynthia Dipbrenner.
Yes, thank you so much. So I'm here to speak on the Argilla Road project in Ipswich that is slated for potential funding in FY29. I'm the VP of Conservation and Resilience at the Trustees. So this is a project submitted by Ipswich, but we are active partners in it as we own the adjacent land and also Crane Beach and Crane Estate, which this road leads to. I wanted to speak to the importance of this project for the local and regional communities. When I first moved out here and I said, I'm doing a project in Ipswich, if people kind of looked at me funny, like they didn't know where it was, and I said, it's where Crane Beach is, they said, oh, I've been there. So it is a huge draw to both the local economy and also the regional and state economy. We employ over 50 employees a year, and it draws over 500,000 visitors a year. They come to recreate, enjoy nature, enjoy the beach, spend time with their families. Right now, the road is currently eroding along the sides. The shoulder is eroded quite a ways in many places, and it causes a safety issue for pedestrians and bicycles. It floods to the point where it's impassable about 9 to 10 times a year. And so at that point, it's closed for several hours during the day. We have people either trapped at the beach or not able to get to the beach or the Crane Estate. With sea level rise projections, we did a climate vulnerability assessment of this property and others. It shows that it will be underwater every day at a high tide, sometime between 2050 and 2070, probably closer to 2050. So we're concerned about the condition of the road, its integrity, but then also the safety of all of thousands of people that are out at the beach, and then vehicles are unable to get back and forth. So the goal of this project was to create a project of elevate the bridge, create a project that was resilient to 2070, given sea level rise projections. That's the design that we have proposed with the city. It's currently in the Great Marsh ACEC. And so we've been working diligently with DEP to figure out what design would work for them. We have had some amazing meetings in the last few months, and we have a very clear permitting pathway that they've given us a green light for. Just getting ready to resubmit our notice of intent. I want to mention that one reason we're doing this project is to be a model for other projects in the region. In the Great Marsh alone, there's 42 miles of road, and half of them are currently flooded at a mean high water. By 2100, that'll increase to 75%. So there's lots of projects waiting in the wings. And some of them clearly are not going to rise to the priority level, and maybe we'll abandon them, and other projects will say our priority and we want to raise those. This, I believe, is one of those. The plan is to upsize the culvert, add several high marsh culverts to increase tidal exchange. So the Trustees is a conservation organization. We were working very hard and pulled in over $2 million to restore our 1,400 acres of salt marsh, and working with partners to restore over 8,000 acres of marsh through healing the historic agricultural ditches that run through the marshes, which will allow the marsh to actually increase in elevation and keep up with sea level rise. So it is our intention to do a project that is very much minimizes the impact of the marsh and also increases the health of the marsh. With sea level rise, we expect by 2070, most of the marsh, which is high marsh, flooding once a month, will transition to low marsh, flooding twice a month. I'm sorry, flooding every day. And then by 2100, it'll transition to tidal flats. So it is critically important for marsh health that we allow tidal exchange so that the marsh can migrate inland. And that's one of the main drivers of this project. I want to say we're strong partners with the town. We've worked together on the design to secure funding, to figure out a permitting pathway, and also to engage the community. We've done lots of webinars and community impact surveys, worked with the students and volunteers and visitors alike to talk about what this project could look like. We also have secured a $2.5 million state transportation bond funding allocations. So I don't know if that helps in this process, but we're also poised and ready to help fundraise to offset any TIP funds if that would be helpful. Last year, we had $4.4 million in federal earmark funding pending under Senators Warren and Markey, and Congressman Moulton has said he is very interested in pursuing a federal earmark as well, but he needed the project to be on the TIP list first. So in conclusion, I just want to say, I think this is a model project. It minimizes the impacts to natural resources. It will improve the habitat, and it is designed for the long term, hopefully 2070. So thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Dippener. Next up, John Cashel.
Yes, good morning. I'm John Cashel, newly appointed Planning Director for the City of Woburn. And Mayor Concanon asked me to speak this morning just to convey Woburn's downtown improvement project that's been on the tip for a long time. It's been a priority for Woburn to improve its downtown Main Street corridor, both for safety and traffic congestion improvement purposes. And he wanted me to make sure that I convey to the MPO the importance of this project and that the city is fully committed to try to move forward with this project as soon as possible. Mayor Concanon was just newly elected, taking over from the former mayor, Scott Galvin. And we really want to do everything we need to do as a city to work with the MPO to get this project back on track. And again, to work as effectively as we can with MassDOT. Just recently, I've had a lot of communications with Ethan LaPointe about this project and trying to keep it on track. And being realistic, Woburn wants to make sure that we're able to work with the MPO to appropriately schedule this project as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Cashel.
Thank you.
Next, David Kucharski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dave Kucharski, City of Salem Traffic and Parking Director. Just wanted to clarify something the mayor mentioned earlier. The city has submitted their 75% plans to MassDOT this past January. We've also had a right-of-way meeting, and we're working with an appraiser to start looking at the temporary and permanent easements associated with the project. So just want to clarify, we're actively working on that, and we truly hope to stay focused and committed to this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kucharski. That concludes the people who have raised their hand or signed up. Before I leave Zoom, is there anyone else on Zoom who would like to speak at this time? I don't see anybody. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak at this time? Come on up, Brad. State your name for the record, please.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Brad Rawson. I serve the City of Somerville as Director of Mobility, and through you, good morning to the board. Chair, I'd just like to say a big thank you to staff who have organized a great hybrid meeting. I want to say thank you to all of our board members, all of our project proponents who have taken the time to come in person. Folks, we are all on the same team. We are here to build culture, and culture is easier to build when we see each other face to face in the hallways. We do not take for granted that people have to travel, and this is really, really hard. We also do not take for granted that staff have to manage a hybrid environment to make sure that folks can participate even if they can't travel. We're getting to the pressure cooker part of our annual calendar, Chair, and I want to encourage all of our board members as well as project proponents to do two things simultaneously. One is focus on projects, and the second is to focus on process. This organization, this staff, this board, our agency partners and project proponents have done some really important things over the last year or two to continue to try to get the right information at the right times, have an inclusive process that brings more and more communities into this room, feeling ownership as part of this team. So please, in the pressure cooker moments ahead of us in the next few weeks, let's remember that we're all in this together, and that next year and the year after and the year after, we will continue to have challenging moments. But let's keep improving the process every year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brad. Yes, please come on up and introduce yourself.
If I had known I could have stayed at home and been recognized sooner, I would have done so. But good morning. My name is Marcia Rasmussen. I'm a part-time planner for the town of Sudbury, here on behalf of the town of Sudbury Select Board and Town Manager for the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Phase 3, which will complete 20 miles of this eagerly anticipated 25-mile rail trail from Framingham to Lowell. I want to echo the work and appreciation for the Mass DOT project manager who brought this project to the attention of the CTPS staff, for Ethan LaPointe for reaching out to the town of Sudbury, and for the work that was done to get our project at least under consideration. And I also want to thank members of the MPO and the advisory committee for their care and consideration as they deliberate on all these deserving and diverse projects that will be positive impacts for many, many communities. I've submitted 3 letters of support for this project from the Sudbury Select Board and Town Manager, and from a resident who's been actively involved with the rail trail over the years. This project continues to receive overwhelming support from residents, businesses, and landowners because it is part of the regional transportation network, intersecting with the Mass Central Rail Trail in Sudbury and providing access to Fitchburg, commuter, as well as commuter rail in West Concord, and eventually to the residents of Framingham. The trail expands bicycle and pedestrian connections within the community to schools, parks, recreation, open spaces, houses of worship, municipal facilities, and commercial areas. And this project promotes safe alternative means of transportation for residents, healthy communities, for kids and for their parents, and reduce reliance on automobiles, which will improve air quality, and is an alternative for those who do not drive, who can't afford a car, or choose not to. So thank you so much for your consideration and for your work here. It's greatly, greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much. Any other comments at this time? Seeing none, if you want to comment during the meeting, please raise your hand either online or here in the room, and we will try to call on you. Next item on the agenda is the Regional Transportation Council Advisory Council Report. Lynn Diggins.
It's quite all right, Mr. Chair. So we had a meeting it was the second Wednesday of the month. I guess it was last week. Yeah, it was pretty much a building block meeting based on our current work on the UPWP and the TIP. But I do want to call attention to Stella Jordan's great presentation on what other advisory councils are doing across the country, because we are getting ready to, or we're in the process of updating our memorandum of understanding, and the advisory council element is a big part of that. So it was a good presentation. If you are curious, go and check out the video, and we look forward to building on our previous meeting, our next meeting coming up the second Wednesday of April. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for Lynn? Seeing none. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of February 1st. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the minutes? Please state your name for the record. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, I'll make a motion to approve the MPO meeting minutes of February 1st.
Jen Rowe.
Jen Rowe, I will make a motion to second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any comments, questions, changes, or suggestions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
MassDOT, actually, David Muller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, abstain.
thank you, Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Jim Fitzgerald, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Erin Chute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Melissa Tentopoulos, oh, pardon me.
Yeah,
We're gonna go
no,
to-
that's fine. Melissa Tentopoulos, yes.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Is Chris Diorio online as well? Next is Rachel Benson
Rachel Benson, yes.
and Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, David. Next item on the agenda is tip scenario development. Ethan Lapointe.
Let's hope the clicker works. Good morning, everybody. It works. My name is Ethan Lapointe, and I am the Transportation Improvement Program Manager for the Boston Region MPO. This presentation here today is to present an initial funding scenario for your consideration as we develop the federal fiscal years 2025 to 29 TIP. So just to provide a high-level overview of this presentation, because there is a lot of information not only in this presentation, but also before you. I will be, physically, for many of you, I will be starting off with a resource guide to describe exactly what kind of handouts are present here today and also available on the MPO's meeting calendar, provide an overview on how today's meeting relates to future meetings that the MPO will be having with regard to selecting projects for target funding in the TIP, review what we're hoping to get out of today's meeting versus some of the others that are going on, summarize some of the discussions that were had on the March 14th TIP Process Readiness and Engagement Committee meeting, and then we'll get into the substance of this presentation, which is really the proposed initial scenario, its projects, and the changes that will be made there, and also the scenario factors that are being considered in future meetings. And then, of course, we will have time for discussion and Q&A. So, starting off with some resources, the first big item is the initial scenario number 2 document. This is scenario number 2 because initial scenario number 1 was presented last week to the TIP Process Readiness and Engagement Committee meeting. This is substantively similar to the readiness scenario that has been presented previously. If you are looking for anything that differs between that readiness scenario, what was presented last week, and what you have here before you, refer to any cells that may have a purple or lavender highlight there. If you are looking for new projects, those are in blue. Any projects that are delayed are shaded red. Oh, too much. The next item is a packet of TIP project descriptions. This was presented at the March 7th MPO meeting, but has been provided here again with some updated scores and titles for some new projects. There are no new projects in that packet versus what was presented back on March 7th, but that is there for reference as we discuss any new projects being considered for the TIP. In tandem with that is also the project scoring summary, once again presenting new project scores for some projects in that table format, substantively similar to the March 7th meeting presentation and materials there. In tandem as well, there is a draft table of evaluation metrics for new projects. This table is not entirely complete, as many of our design projects do not have the data necessary to determine air quality improvements. So you may notice some blank cells in that table, but it should help to get an idea on how various projects that are new to the TIP may be considered against, or for how they perform against the MPO's goals and objectives. And last but not least, although there is also a MassDOT project list in tandem, based on a request that was made from the TIP Process Readiness and Engagement Committee last week, in addition to the MBTA's new projects for consideration in federal fiscal year 25 and 6, the MBTA has also provided a table that lists out their project readiness information and a brief project description for those projects. I'll be going into detail on that in my presentation here today, along with some additional MassDOT highway projects for consideration in those years. I believe MassDOT also provided a physical copy of their projects as well. I just did not have time to put a slide on that here.
Ethan, hold on a second. Am I supposed to have that one in paper form?
I believe, I don't know if they were printed out, but they are available on the MPO meeting calendar as well.
All right.
I think some of us are missing it.
Yeah, some of us have it and some of us don't, so.
If any staff have any extra, could you pass them around? I don't know if anyone has extra.
It's okay, Ethan, I'm sorry.
Oh, no
You
problem.
can keep going.
Okay, so just kind of continuing with housekeeping for a bit there on the TIP development schedule. So today's meeting, March 21st, is the first formal meeting for the presentation of programming scenarios to the MPO board. Last week at the TIP Process Readiness and Engagement Committee, or the TIPper, we discussed the priorities and strategies through which this scenario may be developed, along with some of the main concerns that we are trying to address. To kind of orient this, at that last week meeting, that was mostly a strategy and prioritization meeting, and in this meeting, we are hoping to get early votes and actions on some items within this scenario. Not to deal with all items, but really the most pressing needs of fiscal constraint, frankly. If there are any outstanding questions or needs for information that board members request here, we are hoping to use next week's TIP committee meeting to address some of those before that final vote that we're hoping to have at the April 4th MPO meeting. So, to describe some of these objectives, first off, I'll refresh some of the information that was presented at the February 15th, 2024 MPO meeting there. Of 28 projects that were in the MPO's regional target funded program that are not in community connections, there were 16 of those projects that were recommended for delay. Most of those impacts were seen in the first 2 years of the TIP, with 6 of 9 projects delayed out of federal fiscal 25 and 5 of 7 in federal fiscal 26. In addition to those projects, and there was also some overlap there, 13 projects saw significant cost increases above 10%. This led to significant financial ramifications for fiscal constraint in federal fiscal years 27 and 28. Just to provide a refresher, where we began with that project readiness scenario was a surplus of funding of about $72.8 million in fiscal 25, about $34.7 million in fiscal 26, upwards of a deficit of $80 million in fiscal 27, and a similar deficit of around $30 million approximately in 2029. We also had a substantive amount of funding available still in federal fiscal year 2029 to fund new projects at around $51.2 million in that year. Again, this is where we started, but it is not where we are today. Today's objective is really to identify a TIP scenario that achieves fiscal constraint for MPO target funding. Fiscal constraint refers to a situation in which the sources of funding available, in this case, that federal funding and its associated match for funding regional target projects, is not exceeded by the amount of projects and their budgets and costs programmed within the TIP. MassDOT and the MBTA will also be presenting separately in a future meeting with regard to how their programs are also attaining fiscal constraint and what their projects are also trying to act on in scope. So, now to summarize what happened at last week's TIP committee meeting. That was one push and it moved 3 slides. So at that previous week's TIP committee meeting, we not only had a discussion around early scenarios in the TIP, but it's also worth noting that we went into detail on the disparate impact and disproportionate burden, or DIDB, scoring methodology for the TIP that greatly informs the equity scores that many projects have. I should also note here, the recording of that meeting is available online for those who may be interested in covering that topic or may also want to refer to some of what I'm about to talk about here in the summary. The key outcome of that meeting was to identify and discuss some of the main factors driving today's presentation here, namely the underallocation of funding, or that surplus, in fiscals 25 and 6, and the overallocation or deficit of funding in fiscal 27 and 28. And of course, with new projects seeking funding, how funding in federal fiscal year 29 could be utilized either to fund those new projects or in addition to supporting advanced construction projects, projects that are funded across multiple federal fiscal years. So this initial scenario that we are presenting to you today achieves fiscal constraint in 4 out of 5 TIP years. It is not at full fiscal constraint. There is, in 2025, about $17.42 million of available funding, and much less than that of about $700,000 in federal fiscal year 26, but it is still above constraint. In 2027, there is still a deficit. We have reduced that initial deficit from $80 million to about negative 16.45, and we are very close and thin in our achievement of constraint in federal fiscal year 2028 at $220,000. We were able to get out of the deficit in that year. There is also, after funding new projects and addressing advanced construction for existing projects, about $2.26 million in that year. So, how did we achieve these numbers? First off, versus what was presented at the February 15th MPO board meeting, there has been a cost increase for another project, and that is Wilmington's Route 38 reconstruction project from Route 62 to the Woburn City line. That is a MassDOT proponent project that has increased in cost from about $23 million to $37 million in federal fiscal year 25. This scenario accounts for that cost increase already. This scenario also already incorporates $20.75 million to current MBTA projects that the MPO voted to support as part of the 2024 to 28 TIP development cycle. This includes the Jackson Square Station Accessibility Project for an additional $7.25 million, bringing the total contribution from the MPO to this project to $33.5 million. Columbus Avenue Phase 2 in the city of Boston, which takes the Columbus Avenue bus lanes from their current terminus in Jackson Square on the MBTA's Orange Line up to Ruggles, also on the MBTA's Orange Line, has been programmed for an additional $7.5 million to address some utility work and additional streetscape elements near Roxbury Crossing, Ruggles, and Prentice Streets. The total contribution of the MPO to this project to date is $34.05 million. That also includes a $14.8 million contribution made all the way back in federal fiscal year 2021. And also for the commuter rail transformation project in Reading, that project was a lump sum line item that not only included a new turn track for the Haverhill line in Reading, but also improvements to the Wilbur interlocking there. The initial project cost was $14 million and has been recommended for increase by $6 million to total of $20. We also are already accounting for some new projects for regional transit authorities amounting in federal fiscal year 25 to $6.8 million. For the Cape Ann Transportation Authority, this is about $3.07 million, $1.3 million for facility modernization, $1.71 million for the procurement of 4 low-emission diesel-electric hybrid buses, and $65,000 to upgrade cashless fare system payments for their Americans with Disabilities Act and dial-a-ride services. The Metro West Regional Transit Authority has been programmed for $3.73 million. 1.98 of that is for an application that the authority made under the MPO's Transit Transformation Program back in November. But there is also a new $1.75 million project in addition to that to redesign their Blandon Hub facility to improve operations and training facilities for their staff and also their vehicle bays to help accommodate those new compressed natural gas buses. Moreover, this also includes a weather-enclosed year-round customer waiting area that has also been expanded and creates a separate facility, or would rather design a separate facility so that customers are not operating in the same presence as the wait and rest zone for their drivers. So this is some small text on screen, but basically for the federal fiscal year's 2025 Community Connections Program, the MPO received applications for 10 projects. This also included the bike share support programs as well within that. This included Arlington's installation or request for funding to install 123 bicycle racks, Boston's Blue Bike State of Good Repair project for 12 stations, an installation of 1,600 bicycle racks by the city of Boston to replace single-space parking meters, Brookline's Blue Bike State of Good Repair project for 3 stations and 62 new bikes for the system. Similarly, in Cambridge, 8 stations there for their Blue Bike system and 65 new bikes. We also have 1 microtransit pilot project that is new this year from Chelsea and Revere, which is a new regional on-demand microtransit pilot project using electric vehicles. This application is also seeking funding from additional sources, including MassDOT community transit grants and transit innovation grants. We also have the MPO's first application for its bicycle lanes project within Community Connections by the City of Malden for Canal Street. Revere has a Blue Bikes expansion project, including 4 stations and 40 pedal bicycles. And Situate also has a project for the installation of 25 bicycle racks. Somerville also has a Blue Bike State of Good Repair project for 13 stations. And I will also just pause real quick because I believe that is a printout for the MBTA's readiness projects that may be circulated around.
Doesn't have it, can grab it. It's just not color coded.
We still have a little bit before we get to those projects, so I'll just continue moving on here. The bottom line is that for newly programmed Community Connections projects in federal fiscal year 2025, MPO staff are recommending the funding of all of these projects, which amounts to about $2.7 million. We set aside funding of the bike share support program of about $1 million in fiscal 25, and the initial set aside for Community Connections is $2.5 million. Of that initial set aside, $1.6 million was already programmed to ongoing microtransit projects. However, given that the set aside is then reduced as we develop federal fiscal year 2025, there is no more funding available to fund any further Community Connections projects in that year, and we are also funding above the set aside of about $4.1 million going to Community Connections. Given that Chelsea and Revere's Regional On-Demand Microtransit Pilot Project is a multi-year funded project, requesting funding for about $500,000 in fiscal 25, $450,000 in 26, and $463,000 in 27. The remaining funding, if that project is selected for future rounds of the Community Connections program starting as early as this time next year, is about $2.88 million in 26 and $4.04 million in federal fiscal year 27. So earlier I know that there are going to be some future meetings where we'll be discussing other elements of the TIP, and one of the major items is the federal fiscal year's 2025 design pilot. For a refresher, back when we were developing the federal fiscal years 24 to 28 TIP, the MPO voted to set aside $4 million in federal fiscal year 2025 to fund a sample of projects. Given some recent changes, some projects are requesting more funding for design. Some projects no longer have identified other sources of funding to support their design work. There's about $17.36 million here of total requests from all of the applicants here. There were originally about 15 applicants. The funding surplus in federal fiscal year 2025 has financially enabled more projects to be funded, but we're also constrained by three major factors on the staff side: municipal staff, state-level staff at MassDOT to oversee the administration of these contracts, and MPO staff's ability to also monitor the progress that the project proponents are making to make sure that this pilot is a success. Of that $17.36 million, given that we may not have sufficient time here today to discuss the design pilot, we are tentatively setting aside $10 million in federal fiscal year 2025 to discuss which projects may be funded by that at a later meeting. We are hoping to have that initial discussion at next week's TIP committee meeting. Again, $10 million of that set aside is really insufficient to fund all requests, but as mentioned, there are not only some staff constraints to be aware of, but other factors to consider as well. For example, to put a number on MassDOT's current design process for administration of design funding to towns via discretionary earmarks, MassDOT is currently already managing about 11 design contracts that have a similar structure to this. So a request for about an additional $10 million there is a sizable increase in the amount of design contracts they would already be administering. So we are trying to be mindful of their capacity to handle this so that this pilot can be a success and enable further or expanded work in future TIPs. On that same note of future TIPs, we are anticipating that by helping to improve the project pipeline, there's going to be future demand from MPO funding, either by local project proponents continuing to support our advanced construction projects or other major regional projects that may be seeking funding. This will also help to facilitate the addition of any other new projects that are also on the MPO's long-range plan, just as that advanced construction is supporting current projects on the MPO's long-range plan. We are also mindful in the long run of the return of grant anticipation notes, or GANs funding, in federal fiscal years 2028 and 32, as the reintroduction of GANs payments may have an impact on the availability of funding for regional target projects in that 2028 to 32 TIP, 3 years from now. So, moving into the inputs of this scenario at the project by project level and what differs from what was initially presented in the readiness scenario. In Norwood, for their intersection improvements at Route 1 and University Avenue and Everett Street, there is no change to the scope of work or the overall budget for this project, but it was previously funded with advanced construction across 2 federal fiscal years, with $11.1 million in 2026 and $17.5 million in 27. The project is now fully funded in 2026 for $27.6 million, and this was done to help alleviate some of that initial stress in federal fiscal year 27. For Lynn's rehabilitation of Essex Street project, at the readiness days, this was initially recommended for a 2-year delay out of federal fiscal year 25 to federal fiscal year 2027. In discussions with the City of Lynn and their consultant, federal fiscal year 2026 may be more attainable given recent changes that they've made locally to their process for acquiring right-of-way and also performing public engagement work. We are currently splitting the funding on this project, or recommending a split of funding for this project with $10 million in federal fiscal year 26, while still keeping $9.7 million in federal fiscal year 2027, as there's insufficient funding in 26 to fund the whole project. As was noted earlier, for Belmont's Community Path project, or their component of the Massachusetts Central Rail Trail, at the Readiness Days presentation back on February 8th, there was an initial recommendation to delay the project from federal fiscal years 26 to 27. Since then, the town has conducted a design public hearing in conjunction with MassDOT and their consultant on March 8th, which has indicated strong continued support for the project and also some mitigation of risk factors with regard to right-of-way and certain design elements. As a result, this project is able to return back, or I should say stay in, federal fiscal years 2026 with $8 million in that year and $12.5 million in federal fiscal year 2027. The budget for this project overall remains unchanged, and there may actually be anticipation of potential freight cost decrease based on some design changes in a future TIP cycle. With regard to our first and only new project in federal fiscal year 2026, this is Quincy's intersection improvements at Willard Street and Ricciuti Drive. This is a $1.9 million intersection signalization project at 75% design right now, which not only includes a small shared use path at the intersection, but that shared use path will connect into bicycle lanes on Ricciuti Drive that the city will be implementing, provide connections to Quincy Quarries, and also multifamily housing developments that are further down Ricciuti Drive. For the Transit Transformation Program, we have actually reduced the set aside of $6.5 million in that year, as we had done to fiscal 25 in the last TIP development cycle, in order to support $750,000 each, first for the Cape Ann Transportation Authority's low-emission bus project, and $750,000 for the Metro West Regional Transit Authority's facility redesign project. This leaves $5 million to fund projects in federal fiscal year 26 of the Transit Transformation Program. And just to account for it here, as this is a multi-year project, Chelsea and Revere's on-demand microtransit project is programmed for $450,000 approximately. We are recommending as an item for consideration to potentially utilize some of that federal fiscal year 26 surplus, about $3.05 million in long-range priority project design. Just as we are anticipating discussing design projects further at a future meeting, this item may also be discussed in greater detail at a future meeting as well. These are two projects that are listed on the MPO's long-range transportation plan, Destination 2050, that currently lack design or construction funding. These being Lexington's Route 4 225 interchange and Hartwell Avenue project, and Framingham's Route 126 and 135 grade crossing projects. We are hoping to set aside some funding here, being $1.4 million for Framingham and $1.65 million for Lexington, to advance design for preliminary engineering and outreach to update Framingham's old design for Route 126 and 135, and for Lexington to work on its first stage of their project near the 425 interchange, which is a currently MassDOT studied project. And that, again, jumped too much. Now moving into federal fiscal year 27, the year that is currently facing a deficit. So first off, in discussions with the City of Boston has recommended that the MPO consider the removal of $8.6 million of funding in federal fiscal year 27, as their new internal estimate suspects that should there be any changes to their schedule, the project may have an advertising year of federal fiscal year 2028. So that $8.6 million of funding is being removed, but the current amount of funding in 2028 of $33.5 million is holding. We are currently recommending for McGrath Boulevard in Somerville a reduction in advanced construction funding from $35 million to $30 million, with that amount picked up in federal fiscal year 29, and any remaining funding for that project that is funded across 4 years being addressed in the federal fiscal year's 26-30 TIP. For Malden Spot Pond Brook Greenway, based on some discussions we've had with the city and also identifying or considering some recommendations made by MassDOT at their TIP readiness days, we are recommending a current delay of the project to federal fiscal year 2028, as the project still has not yet achieved 25% design, though the city is actively making progress towards that design threshold. Continuing on in federal fiscal year 2027 and developing the 24-28 TIP in 27, there had been some surplus there. One of the projects that was selected by the MPO to support the utilization of that funding surplus was a MassDOT proponent project in Everett for multimodal and safety improvements on Route 16. This was initially recommended for a delay to federal fiscal year 2027 during readiness days, but we are removing the project from the regional target program, and it is our understanding that MassDOT Highway is covering this project with statewide highway funding. This project is an initial project in order to address further work that is planned on Route 16 in Everett, but that project has now been removed from the statewide highway program to be addressed at a later date, as that project is also seeing some changes to its project readiness. And I apologize because the transit transformation bullet that is here is actually a holdover. In federal fiscal year 2027 for Chelsea and Revere's on-demand microtransit project, there is still $450,000 programmed in that year. All of these changes leave a deficit of negative $16.45 million that still must be addressed, which is the priority for today's discussion. In 2028, there are also some changes here resulting from some rebalancing of advanced construction to reconsider and better reflect the design and delivery schedules for these projects. Brookline's rehabilitation of Washington Street project was initially recommended for a delay from federal fiscal year 27 to 28, and was previously funded in 1 year of the TIP for approximately $30 million. The project's new funding spread reflects $10 million in federal fiscal year 2028 and $18.99 million in federal fiscal year 2029. Similarly, Westwood and Norwood's reconstruction of Canton Street project is now going to be funded with $12.85 million in federal fiscal year 28 and $10 million in federal fiscal year 29 to reflect its development and delivery schedule, rather than having all funding in federal fiscal year 28 as it was previously. Accounting for what I mentioned on the previous slide, Malden Spot Pond Brook Greenway is now funded for $4.86 million in federal fiscal year 28. We have also reduced the community connection set aside from $2 million to $2.5 million, as that reduction has addressed the initial deficit of $26.04 million that we had in that year. There is, however, very minimal funding remaining for contingency in that year, and once constraint may be found in federal fiscal year 27, there could be an opportunity to identify additional pathways to increase that not only reserve funding for contingency, but refill that community connection set aside. So 2029 is a year in which there are two major considerations for developing this scenario. The first is advanced construction, which is a mechanism by which projects are funded across multiple years to reflect projects that may not be constructed in a single year, and their funding is allocated accordingly. This also includes considering and setting aside some funding to be addressed in future TIP development cycles. The graphic that is shown on screen here, just as an example, shows Rutherford Avenue's current development cycle for its approximately $200 million budget. Based on some changes that are now currently being reflected in the TIP, with the removal of the project from federal fiscal year 2027, we are recommending $45 million in federal fiscal year 2029, in addition to the $33.5 million in 2028. This brings total funding in the TIP for the project to $78.5 million. The reason for this is that there is still a need for $120 million for this project to identify funding for in future TIP cycles, though this is inclusive of about $26 million in matching funding that the City of Boston is contributing for construction. Similarly, as I'm just going to list all of the advanced construction projects seeking funding in 2029, there is also Somerville's McGrath Boulevard construction project, for which we are recommending $30.31 million programmed. We believe that with this project, there is a strong chance of funding it in full by the federal fiscal years 26 and 30 TIP cycle in 2030. And we also understand that MassDOT and the City of Somerville have applied for some federal discretionary funding, which may also help to accelerate that. For Lynn's rehabilitation of Western Avenue or Route 107 project, we are recommending $20 million programmed in federal fiscal year 29. We also expect that this project's remaining $13 million of funding based on its current cost estimate may be addressed by the federal fiscal years 26 and 30 cycle. It was originally planned to be funded in full in this cycle in 2029. However, given the recommendation for a delay from 27 to 28, that could not be addressed. And as noted previously, we also have about $19 million for Washington Street and Brookline and $10 million for Canton Street and Westwood. We also have some new projects in federal fiscal year 2029 addressing three new projects that were applied for, with two being in the MPO's Complete Streets program and one being in the MPO's Bicycle Network and Pedestrian Connections program. This includes Bellingham's roadway rehabilitation of Route 126 Hartford Road, for which, based on its current estimated schedule for delivery, there is $8.34 million in federal fiscal year 2029 and $8.34 million planned for federal fiscal year 2030, recognizing that the project is incorporating some new stormwater and culvert development elements that may extend its delivery schedule. Similarly, with Ipswich's Argilla Road project, we are recommending programming the project's funding in full in federal fiscal year 2029, but we do anticipate the potential for some cost increases on this project once MassDOT receives a 25% design submission from the town. We also recognize that there are some additional emerging permitting requirements from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, which may require or necessitate that additional funding or development time. But we also recognize that the town and its stakeholders are themselves pursuing additional avenues for further funding to be incorporated here. And lastly, for Sudbury's and Framingham's bike path construction of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Phase 3, we are recommending programming of this project of about, I'm sorry, that number is wrong, $8.6 million in federal fiscal year 2029. and it will be fully funded in federal fiscal year 2029. And the reason why, while this project mostly, as shown on the map on screen, serves and completes the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail in Sudbury, it briefly extends about 200 feet into Framingham, I believe, so that Framingham may also begin their section of the rail trail in a near-term tip cycle. So, with regard to all of the information I have just presented, here is the outcome. This scenario funds 19 new projects. 10 of those 19 are in community connections, 5 are in transit transformation, 2 in complete streets, being Bellingham and Ipswich's projects, 1 being in bike network and pedestrian connections, being Sudbury's and Framingham's Bruce Freeman project, and also 1 in intersection improvements, the Willard Street and Rich Udy Drive project. This still leaves for new projects in 2025 about $17.42 million. The funding that remains in federal fiscal years 26, 8, and 9 will likely be held as reserve to account for any cost increases or new projects in future TIP development cycles. The main issue to be addressed here today is that $16.45 million deficit in federal fiscal year 2027. So there's a lot of different factors impacting this TIP development cycle, and to try to make it easier to digest, today we'd like to address and request vote on some specific items. First off, the funding of all federal fiscal year 25 community connections projects for $2.7 million in federal fiscal 25. In 25 and 26, we are requesting a vote to consider the funding of those 5 regional transit authority projects for the Metro West Regional Transit Authority and Cape Ann Transportation Authorities. We're also requesting consideration in 25 and 26 of MBTA project funding, including that $20.75 million of existing projects in federal fiscal year 25, and the consideration of funding new projects in federal fiscal years 25 and 6. To attain fiscal constraint, we are going to be requesting a vote to consider a pathway to address funding deficit in that year, and also to consider in federal fiscal year 29 if the current recommendation for funding new projects and addressing advanced construction for long-term projects is currently adequate and addresses MPO goals and priorities. At future meetings, we are hoping to discuss, and this also includes next week's TIP process, readiness, and engagement committee meeting, the funding of design pilot projects in federal fiscal years 2025. In addition, in federal fiscal year 2025, funding for Newton's Noon in Motion shuttle, given some further changes that have happened to the scope that may reduce its eligibility for funding, and also those long-range transportation program project design funds for Lexington and Framingham's LRTP work. Any items that are not addressed today or that members request additional information for before voting upon can also be discussed at those future meetings as well. So, just to refresh real quick on the Community Connections Program, or item 1. Oh, did I just miss something? Oh, okay. Sorry. For federal fiscal year 2025, again, we have about $2.7 million of community connections in that year. Just to reiterate, funding Arlington's bicycle racks, Boston's bike share project, Boston's bicycle racks project, Brookline's bike share replacement project, Cambridge's bike share repair project, Chelsea and Revere's regional on-demand microtransit pilot project, Malden's Canal Street bicycle lanes project, Revere's Blue Bikes expansion project to Northern Revere, Scituate's installation of 25 bicycle racks, and Somerville's Blue Bike replacement project. Now, item number 2, again to reiterate, is funding for regional transit authority projects amounting to about $6.98 million in federal fiscal year 2025, in addition to $4.5 million already programmed by the MPO's Transit Transformation Program there for the ADA and dial-a-ride customers for CADA, their Gloucester facility modernization, and vehicle replacement for the Cape Ann Transportation Authority. And then again, additional funding for the Metro West Regional Transit Authority to procure their first 29-foot compressed natural gas buses for Route 4 North and 4 South in Metro West Regional Transit Authority, and their Blandon Hub Equitable Redesign Initiative. Item number 3, as a refresher, again being for those MBTA projects, with the current scenario having $17.4 million of funding in federal fiscal year 2025 for the consideration of their new projects. And at the very end here, we may be requesting a vote for each of these items. There is, again, limited funding in federal fiscal year 2026 to fund all of the different projects that the new items that the MBTA is proposing are for, but we could potentially draw against the federal fiscal year 26 set aside in that year of $5 million remaining after the RTA projects. This includes new funding, or I should say, again, this is new funding for these projects in addition to the $20.75 million set aside in scenarios. To provide a refresher on what these projects are, this includes the Tremont and Columbus Avenue bus lanes extension with a funding request for $7.5 million of additional funding. Jackson Square Station Accessibility Project for new elevators and additional updates, modernization, and state of good repair improvements for $7.25 million. And also the Reading Turn Track Project as part of commuter rail transformation work on the Haverhill line of $6 million in addition to that $14 million already programmed. And this slide just shows the contributions of those projects to date. $34.05 million of total MPO funding to Columbus Ave Phase 2. Jackson Square Station accessibility of $33.5 million total. And rail transformation early action items with a total contribution of $20 million. And then again, just for a resource here as I move to discuss some of the new projects that the MPO is considering for federal fiscal years 25 and 26, the MBTA has provided a readiness sheet that states where these projects will be ready to be advertised for construction and eventually completed. The first project for consideration, just going in alphabetical order here, is accessibility improvements for Central Square Station on the Red Line in Cambridge, which I need to specify because there's also a Central Ave station in Milton on the Red Line for the Mattapan trolley. This project is a construction of 2 redundant elevators and modernization of their existing outbound platform elevator in Central Square. The existing inbound elevator was already fully modernized in 2020, and the MBTA is requesting an initial funding amount of $5 million, while also trying to identify other pathways for funding to get their total need of $10 million addressed, but for now, currently requesting $5 million. In tandem with station access and accessibility improvements, there is a pedal and park modernization project. This updates about 15 MBTA pedal and park facilities system-wide for their bicycle parking, which includes control systems and also additional furnishments. This includes stations, I believe, in Salem, Braintree, Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, and Westwood with Route 128 station as well. Also Revere with Wonderland. This is a request for $2.5 million in total to address both the modernization and those furnishings, but the request can be scaled down to only address the initial furnishing needs there for $1.5 million. Just as there is a project for rail modernization on the Haverhill line, the MBTA is also requesting funding for $14 million for their Fitchburg line modernization project to enable 30-minute headways by improving the turn track at Kendall Green Station near Weston. This would enable additional improved service for Boston, Cambridge, Belmont, Waltham, and Weston. And in the city of Boston, and also extending somewhat into Milton, there's the reconfiguration of Mattapan Square, which is the southern extent of their Blue Hill Avenue project, which a portion of which received a RAISE grant from the United States Department of Transportation. This project, which improves the ability of buses to navigate southbound into Mattapan Station, reduces bus travel times by approximately 4 to 6 minutes, and also improves safety for riders and pedestrians as well. And again, is also an initial stage of implementing the full Blue Hill Avenue bus priority corridor project. This is a $20 million request from both the City of Boston and the MBTA to support this project and advance the project to full design from its current 15% stage and then implement. Also in Boston, and also similarly to this corridor, is the Nubian Square Accessibility and Operational Improvements Project for $5 million. This constructs an accessible passenger platform at Nubian Station for the reverse to allow MBTA buses to change their direction, and also utilize some street network improvements being implemented by the City of Boston to improve service efficiencies. Also here, an additional RAISE grant awarded to the City of Boston for their Roxbury Resilient Corridors project that feeds into Nubian Station. So, to lay all of this out on the table, the MBTA has provided 2 scenarios for funding new projects, and each of the below projects, or a combination of those projects, could be funded. The Mattapan Square project, with its request for $20 million, could be funded by not only utilizing funding in federal fiscal years 2025, but just as was done in the development of last year's TIP, reducing the transit transformation set aside in 2026 to get to $20 million. There is also As noted, some near-term readiness projects, which includes the Nubian Central and Petalin Park combination, which amounts to $12.5 million by funding those 3 projects. And each of those 3 projects could be implemented over the next few years. I should actually note all of these can be implemented over the next few years, but Nubian and Central, based on the readiness updates, are the ones that are most ready for implementation. So also, just for consideration, federal fiscal year 27, in federal fiscal year 2025 is opportunities to fund some existing MassDOT statewide highway program projects. These projects are currently programmed in MassDOT's statewide highway program in federal fiscal year 25 and include 1 project for Safe Routes to School in Arlington at the Stratton School and also 1 shared use path project in Wellington for the Wellington Underpass Trail over Route 28 near Wellington Orange Line Station. Just to list 2 of these investments, there are 2 projects here that are executable in federal fiscal year 2025. There's 1 proposed for federal fiscal year 2026, but given recent developments, there's insufficient funding in the Regional Target Program to support it. This, as noted, is Arlington Stratton School Improvement Project through MassDOT's Safe Routes to School program to enable safer walking paths for vulnerable users into Arlington, and Medford's shared use path construction under Route 28 and the Wellington Underpass for about $4.4 million there. And again, that project is federal fiscal year 2025, and both of those are currently funded in the statewide highway program. So, item number 4, and again, this is just a refresher on everything that I've talked about this meeting, is the main item that we are looking for a decision on here today. To address the deficit that we initially identified during the TIP readiness days, about $80 million, staff have employed several options already to get that deficit down to $16.45 million. We have rebalanced advanced construction allocations to reflect schedules for new projects. And we have also recommended delays for some projects based on certain readiness concerns or risk out of federal fiscal year 27 into 28, and rebalanced funding in 28 to try to offset that. We are also utilizing some statewide highway assistance to cover that $5 million Everett project that I noted earlier, which was originally a statewide highway project, then became funded by the MPO's Regional Target Program, and is now returning to the statewide highway program. The remaining deficit of $16.45 million is very likely at this point to require removal of projects from the TIP. There are 7 projects currently in federal fiscal year 2027 that, due to a combination of readiness issues, have either been delayed into that year or, given current updates or their current readiness status, may be considered here. We anticipate that given this deficit of $16.45 million, it is likely that only 1 of these projects may need to be considered here or reevaluated for that funding. This includes, first being Boston's Bridge Preservation Project, and again, this is in alphabetical order, for Cambridge Street over the MBTA's Orange Line, commuter rail, Amtrak lines, and CSX freight lines. This is a $16.6 million project that initially had a 100% design when the city was developing it internally, but due to a need for additional capital funding, requested financial assistance last year from the MPO. The delay from federal fiscal year 26 to 27 was prompted because of the need for that additional CSX rail permit in order to do this deck replacement project on the bridge and add that westbound bus lane going out of Sullivan Square Station. Cambridge Street in particular is also a connecting route between the cities of Boston and Somerville, speaking specifically Boston's Charlestown neighborhood, and directly connects into Rutherford Avenue there. The next project, its current budget of about $11 million in Everett, which is the reconstruction of Beecham Street, is insufficient to address the current budget deficit. The project was recommended for a delay out of federal fiscal year 25 to 27, and it did submit its pre-25% design plans in December 2023, with an expectation of achieving 25% design in March. There is also a chance, based on MassDOT's TIP readiness days notes, that 75% design submission could be consolidated into a 100% design submission as well. The initial recommendation for a delay here was prompted by the need for additional time to consider right-of-way takings, namely with regard to rail grade crossings in the project area. Again, this project's budget of $11 million would likely require another project to be incorporated alongside it. This other project would be Ipswich's resurfacing and related work on Central and South Main Streets. This project is continuing to make progress upon its 25% design and is currently funded for $6 million in federal fiscal year 2027. The delay of this project would have a fairly small impact. So again, it would need to be done likely in tandem with Everett, and would potentially, if it was delayed out of 27 to be put in 28 and consolidated there, then create deficit issues in federal fiscal year 28. Continuing alphabetically onto the next slide, we have 4 more projects. Excuse me. This being Salem's Boston Street Improvement Project first, which recently saw a cost increase resulting from its 75% design submission of about 84%, from $14.17 million to $26.12 million. MPO staff has been in touch with both the city, MassDOT, and their consultant on this project. It's our understanding that because they have reached 75% design and are making strong momentum as they continue to move forward on design, that this project has a strong chance of continuing to be advertised at its currently programmed date. The main challenges for this project as it stands are currently at the easement stage, but again, the city is very responsive here, and this cost increase also reflects the need really to address utility work under the project, including, given that this is a full-depth roadway reconstruction, some old trolley tracks that are currently underneath the road and need to be removed. This next project is not a request for removal of the project entirely, but rather a consideration to reduce funding further in federal fiscal year 2027 for Somerville's McGrath Boulevard project. The McGrath Boulevard project is the only project remaining in federal fiscal year 27 that is funded with an advanced construction spread on its dollars. That being said, the McGrath Boulevard project in Somerville is also one of the only projects on the tip right now that has not, or rather during the tip readiness days, was not identified as being of high risk or foreseeing a delay out of that year. The project is currently funded even after drawing down its $35 million amount to $30 million, with $30 million in that year. In order to address the deficit, the project would need to be likely reduced in budget to $12.5 million a year, which would have an adverse impact on the city's ability to deliver the project based on its current delivery timeline there. This is also a joint effort, again, between MassDOT and the city of Somerville to develop this project. And the project is seeking federal discretionary funding, the request for which could also be impacted by that change. Again, there's a short-term benefit here for the TIP in the form of finding fiscal constraint in federal fiscal year 27, but given this project is funded with advanced construction, that $16.5 million would need to be found in a future TIP with inflation factored in also to address that new gap. The next project is Weston's reconstruction on Route 30 project, for which the town was anticipating a submission, I should say MassDOT was anticipating to receive a submission of a 75% design in November 23, but this was delayed due to contractual issues with their designer. The scope has also been changed to address some consistent concerns from abutters and public comment. The project is removing, given its 26% cost increase, several signals from the project, and reconsidering and adjusting their shared use path as well. Given that vocal opposition. The project also still requires town meeting approval to move forward, but the town has expressed confidence in their ability to execute here. Similarly, the city of Woburn is also making a renewed push for their roadway intersection improvements project at Woburn Common at Route 38. This project has $17.38 million of funding in federal fiscal year 2027. That said, the project has been on the tip for some years, since the federal fiscal years 21 and 25 tip, and it is not yet at 25% design. Given the cost estimate of the project today is very similar to what was present on the federal fiscal years 21-25 tip, there is also a potential for further cost increases as design progresses, just as is the case for any other project. This project was delayed out of federal fiscal years 26 to 27, given that lack of a 25% design and some concerns as the intersection control evaluation or ICE process and right-of-way work have yet to begin on the project. So, moving again, just one more item here before we can move into discussion is the federal fiscal years 29 funding allocation. There are 2 tables on screen here before you, just showing one, the new projects for Bellingham on Route 126, Ipswich for Argilla Road, and Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Phase 3. This amounts to approximately $23.5 million of new projects in federal fiscal year 29. For advanced construction, in order to support set-asides for the MPO's community connections, bike share support, and transit transformation programs, there's about $11 million there carved out at the onset. This includes $45 million for the reconstruction of Rutherford Avenue in Boston, $19 million for Brookline's rehabilitation of Washington Street, $20 million for the rehabilitation of Western Avenue in Lynn, $30.31 million for Somerville's McGrath Boulevard reconstruction, and the reconstruction of Canton Street in Westwood for $10 million, amounting to advanced construction funding for existing MPO projects in federal fiscal year 29 of $135.3 million. These two amounts combined represent a programming amount in federal fiscal year 29 of $158.77 million, leaving about $2.26 million of unprogrammed funding in that year. So that was a lot of information. I'm happy to go back to some of those slides and discuss each item in order, but again, MPO staff are requesting that each of those 5 items be addressed as part of today's activity, and with the priority being on item number 4, that federal fiscal year 27 deficit.
Thank you, Ethan. That was a lot of information, really well presented. A lot of hard work. You're to be commended. Let's jump into item 4 because I'm not sure we're going to take individual votes on things, and I don't want to spend a lot of time discussing things that probably most people support and we may need more information on anyway. So I don't know what slide should be put up to discuss item 4 of a $16 million deficit. I assume it might be the one with the projects listed on it. There you go. Now, this says deprogramming. It is, by deprogramming, is it deferral or deletion or either one? Are you suggesting that we would take these projects out of the TIP or that we might defer them into the, and I understand the cascading effect, right? But is it staff's position that one of these just has to come out because the ones that are in 28 and 29 either can't be moved or shouldn't be moved?
Yes, that's a good question. I should have mentioned that during my speaker's notes. So deprogramming here would be removal of the project from the current TIP and reincorporating that project into the TIP universe there. Alternatively, there is an option, if board members would like to consider this, of moving the project into federal fiscal year 2029, but given, as I just mentioned, there's only about $2.2 million there, that money would likely need to come from advanced construction projects, or the MPO would need to vote to not fund any new projects in that year. And again, any project that is selected for deprogramming today could reapply to the TIP at a future date should funding become available in that cycle.
Thank you, Ethan. Questions, comments? Anybody? Eric Barassa.
I'll start.
Use this mic, Eric.
Sure. Thank you. My first question, I think, is for MassDOT, which is maybe John or maybe David. So the 16 million in 16.45 million in fiscal year 27, is there the ability of MassDOT to absorb maybe that Boston project? I felt like the Boston Cambridge Street project, I feel like that was a project that came to the MPO when we had previous sort of unprogrammed funds, and we committed to doing that. And I wonder, is there an ability for MassDOT to take that on with some of the statewide funds?
All right, John, I'll start, and you can jump in if I say anything that's wrong or you want to clarify. So as of today, I believe our statewide lists are fully constrained without this project in it. So if we were to consider taking this project on, we would have to kick something else off in order to maintain our commitment to geographic equity and fairness to other regions. We'd choose $16 million worth of projects in the Boston MPO to kick off. But I mean, we can certainly take that look if that's what people would like us to do. Anything else, John?
I don't need to really add anything to that, but overall, statewide asks, the chair can add that we have requests from probably 7 other regions for statewide support, totaling probably over 40 plus $50 million that, that affects any decision to move projects.
Thank you, John. Other questions, Eric?
Yeah. I mean, I'd be interested in talking, through these projects a little bit more. And I know we have, some, I think, project proponents in the room, and maybe, I don't know exactly who's on the virtual meeting, but maybe there's some there as well. But maybe we could start with the Cambridge Street project. John, maybe you could speak about where that project sort of stands, and Jen, I don't know if you, I mean, it says Boston. I thought it was a MassDOT project. Is it a MassDOT? The Cambridge Street project?
Cambridge Street over the T?
Yeah,
That's a City of Boston project.
that is a City of Boston project.
Yes.
Okay, I always thought it was a MassDOT project, that it was tied up with the whole
Well, it's a
Moffett
bridge.
Way.
You would naturally
Yeah.
assume that a bridge project would
Yeah.
come to us, but it's a City of Boston proponent project.
So yeah, maybe Jen, you could speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I did want to note that Ben Sun, an engineer who's working on the Cambridge Street project, is on the call, so he could speak more to the project and kind of the delay it faced related to CSX. I did talk with Ben before this meeting. He would be supportive of the project being taken by MassDOT if that is an option. Of course, we would want to understand what the impact of that would be to other regional projects. He is ready to release, I think it was like $750 million in design funds for it to get it to 25%. So that's something we could still continue to do as the city, assuming MassDOT would be willing to work with us on that. But I'll maybe could we call on Ben to speak if he's willing to?
Yeah, Ben, are you there? Could you speak to this project?
Yes, this is Ben Sun from City of Boston Public Works Department. This project is, in our mind, is very important project so that we can get ahead of the Rutherford Avenue project. And concurrently, right now, it's the Mystic Moffett Way project, design, build, construction. And we feel this is a really important project to get it out of the way. As we initially had 100% design, just simply based on the city bridge preservation approach, and but later that evolved to become a TIP project, and we are back to the 25% revision by adding additional scope to satisfy the complete street and everything else with the MassDOT standard. Obviously, it is it's important, but it's certainly an advantageous for us if MassDOT is willing to take on this project. But I'll leave that decision with the board and MassDOT.
Can I just, while I have the floor, can I just ask sort of how, if this project was deprogrammed, if it was delayed to 2030, how impactful would that be?
The impact that I envision is actually the adjacent project. Says once Rutherford Avenue is under construction, you possibly could have two contractors to work in the same general area. So the impact is the construction sequencing. That is really the difficult part. But as far as the railroad involvement, that is kind of another monkey wrench into this whole effort, because we're dealing with MBTAs as well as commuter rail and commuter rails and the transit, as well as CSX, which was bought by which bought the P&M when we started the project. So that added the complexity and the uncertainty into this. So the impact, like I said, in short, from my perspective, is potentially be in the future construction activities in the area.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could add one other item.
Of course, John.
Obviously, statewide, we have to account for the color of money, and the region doesn't have to do that. So the Cambridge Street Bridge does not rise up on the priority of the bridge program. So our statewide funds wouldn't, it doesn't fit within our bridge program, that which is fully constrained. Whereas the region, when they program, do not have to worry so much about what we call the color of money and the buckets that we have to distribute funds to, just to clarify.
Other comments on this issue? Questions? Len?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So in general, I would be in favor of not programming anything new in fiscal year 2029. And I think probably don't need to remind people, but we are in this situation, if I recall it correctly, because we decided that we were not going to leave buffer in or unprogrammed funds in each year of the TIP. And so this is going to happen again. Probably in 2029. So I would be in favor. And although I understand that even if we don't program anything new in 2029, we're not going to have much padding anyways. But I think to kind of honor our commitment to these programs rather than deprogram. If we could shift one to 2029, and then not fund anything new in 2029, I would be more in favor of that. Because it seems like we have only like $200,000 in 2028. So if we were trying to shift something to 2028, we still have to do this. I'd be fine with trying to do that too. But I'm still more in favor of trying to avoid deprogramming and just shifting something out. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Ethan, what do the new projects in 29 add up to?
So the new projects in 2029 add up to $23 million. Each of them individually, however, are not large enough. So it would have to be all three, as I believe, well, a combination. So at $23.46 million, that includes 8.34, half of Route 126 rehabilitation. There's an additional 8.34 that is expected to be needed in federal fiscal year 30. There's 6.6 million to Argilla Road, and Bruce Freeman Phase 3 at $8.53 million, which is at 25% design already, making progress towards 75, which is to say that at least 2 of those projects would need to be selected in 29 to remove, or advance construction on any of those projects that are listed on the right column as well. Or combination.
Well, yeah, but so if I'm doing the quick math in my head, there's only 2 projects you could remove to fill your $16 million gap. And when you inflate, as we require you to do, you may have to remove all 3 of those projects. Correct. Unless, again, you monkey around with advanced construction. And all those advanced construction projects are continuation spending of projects we started in either 28 or 29, or 28 or 27.
Correct.
Okay. Other comments? Jim Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just back on the Cambridge Street Bridge, I think I still would like to see what options could be available for switching it to the STIP as Eric had requested. It is it is an odd situation that it's a bridge that is obviously the city's, but it does cross over MBTA and under MassDOT assets. So it is one of those weird situations where it is our bridge, but typically in these situations it wouldn't be. So would like to see what the implications might be for switching it to state funding, as Eric had suggested.
So, well, we know the implications. I think what you're asking is, are we going to? And I think the answer is probably not. Okay? John clarified additional comments from me to say this project, the reason the region took this project on is because it did not rise high enough in our priority list of priority bridges. That is still the case. We can look at it and see if it's a higher priority than other bridges that we would have to cut. But again, we'll take those cuts from other priority bridges in this region to the extent that we can. Okay? So if people want us to, we can go look and see, what we would cut if we had to cut and tell you whether we're actually willing to cut. But I don't think that people should hang their hat on this today. If we take this project out, you should assume this project is out. Not that we won't look and see if we can figure it out, because we will try, but I wouldn't count on it. Other comments? I'm sorry. Yes. I'm sorry, Jim, go ahead. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jim. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I mean, I have less confidence in delaying it to 2030 and somehow trying to find a way to do it with Rutherford. I just, not my area of expertise, but I do feel like it needs to happen before Rutherford, but all right, thank you.
Yeah, Jim, I wasn't intending to say that we think this project should be cut, because we don't. Okay? We just don't think it should be cut with the hope that we'll pick it up, because if it's going to be cut, we probably won't pick it up. That doesn't mean we think we should cut this project. This isn't one we would choose to cut. But it's not our choice. It's not our decision to make.
Yep, thank you.
Yep. Yes, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And great job, Ethan. That was an outstanding presentation. I tend to agree with Len in terms of looking at the new projects. I think it's cleaner and more fair to not make new commitments rather than renege on commitments we've already made. So as frustrating as it would be to not add new projects, I think that's a fair way to go.
Hey, Ethan, can you put the second page of this up?
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
2 pages, right?
Yeah, there's 4 more options as well. And it is likely that of these 7 projects total, 1 would need to be selected, with the exception of those 2 smaller ones on the last slide, which would need to go together.
Lynn?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. Yeah, thank you. So I mean, and just to emphasize why I think it'd be good to drop or not add any new projects is because I think we are guaranteed that projects are going to go up in cost. We're going to see more pressures in the upcoming years, and this still won't leave us a whole lot of buffer in 29. But we're going to need it. I really want to keep that Boston project in there, and I really feel for the folks in Ipswich. It was a low-scoring project, mind you, but it did have a very high score for resiliency, which is a big priority for the MPO. But I think we're keeping it in the universe, and if we do see a gap that pops up for whatever reason, we can bring it in. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Lynn. Other comments? Jen?
This is a question, and apologies for not thinking to look this up before the meeting, but I was curious, had any of these projects already been delayed in the previous TIP cycle, or is this the first instance of them being delayed? Because I guess I'm curious, I know some of the projects don't seem to have advanced very far in the design, and I want to understand if this is something that could have been anticipated by these actors or not.
Ethan?
Good question. I cannot speak to what was necessarily the change between federal fiscal years 22 to 26, but I can speak somewhat to 23, 27 for each of these projects. The Cambridge Street Bridge project in Boston was added as a new project with a Boston proponent in federal fiscal year 26 of the 24-28 TIP development cycle. Again, it had a 100% design when it applied to meet MassDOT design specifications when the city was seeking capital funding. It's now at a 25% revision. Everett's reconstruction of Beecham Street was programmed in federal fiscal year 25. It may have been delayed previously, though I'm uncertain of that. That said, this is a major 2-year shift back on the project. Ipswich's resurfacing and related work on South and Central and South Main Streets, which was pushed back originally from a 2-year spread of 25-26 in the last TIP to 26-27 in the development of 24. That's a lot of different numbers. In the development of the 2024 to 28 TIP, the Ipswich Central and South Main Street project was moved from a 25 and 26 construction spread to a 26 and 27 spread. It has been delayed further by 1 year to 27 and 28 in this cycle. That was a mouthful of numbers. With Salem and Peabody's Boston Street Improvements Project, I cannot speak to this one, though this is, again, a one-year delay back. Somerville's McGrath Boulevard construction project was not pushed back in this cycle and is approaching a 25%. They recently did a design public hearing last month with MassDOT and their consultant. Weston's reconstruction on Route 30 was not recommended for a delay last year, though it is important to note that their 75% design submission was anticipated in November, but was not achieved there. Woburn's roadway and intersection improvements project, I believe, was initially programmed as early as federal fiscal year 24 in the 2021 to 25 TIP development cycle. Though again, that was introduced in 21-25 and is now recommended for a pushback here by 1 year to 2027. So a few of these have been delayed multiple times. The Boston project is the only project that was introduced newly last year, and therefore this is its first time being delayed. The others have been on the TIP for a few years, some holding, some otherwise.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, so I think this raises a question to our, well, we should keep our commitments. Some of these projects, we continue to do this every year, and they're not getting closer to being ready. At some point, if projects can't get ready, we need to be willing to cut them, right? These projects that keep sliding and keep sliding and keep sliding and aren't getting closer to being ready are taking up space that other projects could possibly take and get ready. I'm not saying we should do that today, but I think that was a really interesting question. Who's on the screen? Christine Guichard, please.
Hi, just want to say thank you again, Ethan. Excellent presentation. I just had one question. I noticed for Weston, it had mentioned it requires town meeting approval. I was just curious if that was for additional design funds and right-of-way or just right-of-way.
I believe it is for both, so
Okay,
the
thank
project
you.
can achieve its 75% deadline. The
Thank
town
you.
is working towards that.
And do you know when the town meeting is scheduled for those two items?
I would need to verify that. I believe I received an email from their DPW director, or the town engineer, the other day that may have listed that, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Other comments? Yes.
Hi, also thank you, Ethan. This has been great. I guess I had a question about the Woburn project then, because I know you made some comments that it was work had started again. It seems like it hasn't really moved much, but has anyone spoken? Sorry if I missed it. I'm here to speak about it, and do we know where it stands?
So our understanding is there has been some public comment both at the TIP committee meeting last week and from the new planning director earlier in this meeting. That said, the city has a new mayor and a new planning director who both started in this calendar year and who are interested in moving the project forward. Prior to that, the project had not been advancing, as it is one of the few projects on this list not yet at 25% design.
Other comments, questions, concerns, proposals? Dennis Giambetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if somebody from Weston is on the line, can talk about how many right-of-way takings are there along this strip. I think that's probably the biggest risk of that project.
Seems like the answer is no. The answer?
I can get that answer. Just give me one second.
Yep, thank you, John.
I might be able to pull it, but we'll see.
I believe someone from Woburn has raised his hand online that might be able to answer Darlene's question.
Hi, John Cashel. Thank you again for taking time to hear my concerns with this project. I just want to answer the one question in regard to the transition that's recently taken place. Woburn had a long-standing mayor for 14 years, Scott Galvin. We have a new mayor, Mike Concannon. He is in full support of this project moving forward, as well as all 9 city councilors. We do apologize as a community for not moving this project forward previously, but we do stand committed at this point in time 100% to moving forward with our consultant. We have upwards of $300,000 that has already been expended relative to planning for the project. We have a consultant on board. We have a schedule to move us forward as expeditiously as possible with the 25% stage, have the public hearings necessary to move us beyond that, and rapidly move towards the 75% design stage in this current calendar year. So we're on track to move this project forward finally with this new mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Cashel.
Thank you.
Yes, Ethan?
I may be able to speak to the previous question on the reconstruction of Route 30 project in Weston on that easement. I don't know if, John, you've got it, but...
I have it.
Oh, you have it? Okay, you probably have more up-to-date info than I have. So.
Well, at the present time, there are 39 permanent easements, 2 fee takings, and 88 temporary easements. But there's also involvement with DCR on a parcel, and that needs to be worked through with DCR on complexity and whether we need to go through an Article 97 acquisition process.
Thank you, John. Other comments from members? Questions, comments, suggestions? Jen?
Yes, I just wanted to confirm my understanding, or that I have this correctly. I believe we've heard from all of the municipalities on this list, maybe with the exception of Weston. Is that, did someone from Weston come to the TIP committee meeting and I'm forgetting?
We have had offline correspondence with the town on the project. I do not recall if they were present last week, but we did receive a updated and detailed email regarding their next moves for the project. As noted previously, given the 26% cost increase from 16 million to about 20 million, there's also some scope revisions and reductions being made to also try to control costs there. The signal removal, and then given the abutters and right-of-way concerns, they are reevaluating the shared use path as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ethan. Aaron?
Aaron Chute. So I understand that the Salem project is making good progress, gotten to 75%, and saw cost increases, as I know that we're going to see with all of our projects as we move them further along in design. I am curious about the 84% increase. My apologies if I missed this. I see here that the main challenges are in easements, but I'm curious with this project where they're seeing the biggest increases.
My understanding, I had a discussion at 1 p.m. with the consultant in the city yesterday about this. My understanding is that given the current state of the roadway, there's additional, more intensive subsurface work required as part of the project. So it is now a full depth reconstruction. In addition to that, as noted previously, given it is a full depth reconstruction, there are now more interfacing with relocation of utilities, and also given the age of the city of Salem, they still have some old trolley tracks under there that now need to be removed, which was an item that some folks may remember came up on the Mount Auburn Street project in Watertown recently, that the MPO funded.
Thank you, Ethan. Lynn, I see you got your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to first off say that I do agree that we aren't just, I don't advocate just blindly or just without any reconsideration keeping projects on the tip. If they don't show forward progress, then we really should reconsider whether they should be there. And having drawn my attention to the Woburn project, again, the fact that it is at only 25%, I think it's safe to say it's going to go up in costs, and I think we need to think about the ramifications of that. If we do keep it, and I can easily, advocate for pushing it out, or even deprogramming it, and even with doing that, still be very hesitant to program anything new in 2029. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Jay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess I'll agree with some of the points made earlier. I really don't want to deprogram anybody. I think we have commitments to folks who are on the tip already. I want to make sure we fulfill those commitments before we add new projects. But that said, and I think this echoes Len's comment just now, one of these projects, it seems, would have to be pushed to 29, and it's a matter of which one. Is that, I think, a fair assessment? So I think knowing that, we ought to think about which projects, is least likely to, if we're saying it's in 27, or right, that's 27, which one is least likely to be really ready in 27? And there's perhaps some clues here that maybe we can discuss more, but I think that's my assessment.
Eric?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Yeah, I kind of agree. I think that's what we have to discuss, a couple of these projects here. I mean, it seems to me from the conversation today and the information we've received is that, you know, the Weston project, it'd be nice if maybe at the TIP committee meeting, we could have Weston come in and talk more about it. But it seems like there's a lot of uncertainty with that project, and the 39 permanent easements, bringing this to town meeting, you know, that's concern for delay there. The Woburn project, I think Len hit the nail on the head. I mean, that project is, you know, is inevitably going to go up in cost, and it's probably not ready in 27. And so that's one we have to think about. And then I think the Ipswich project has been around for like a really long time. It is advanced. You're proposing to AC it, right?
It has been AC'd for some years now, yeah.
And this is like the main street in the downtown, right?
Yes, part of the difficulty here is for Article 97 environmental permits, right-of-way, and the historic downtown permitting as part of that right-of-way.
Yeah, this project, I feel like, has just been around for a really long time and has been constantly delayed. So I think we need to, out of these, it seems like these three are the most unsure. I'd look for guidance from, you know, from staff and from MassDOT and others on their thoughts on that. But I agree with Jay that I think we have to better understand which one of these is the most sort of vulnerable, if we're going to go the route of pushing something to 29 and not really funding new projects in 29. I will say that I think there's a couple of really good projects that are proposed. We've been, obviously, MAPC, we are big proponents of building out a regional trail system. I feel like the Bruce Freeman Trail project is also sort of one of the state trail priorities. I think that there's another extension piece of it that MassDOT might be looking to fund as well. I think one of the MassDOT project managers, Mike Trepani, are nodding his head. So I know there's implications if we don't do it. What does that mean then for sort of the rest of it? Would like to understand maybe that a little bit more. But yeah, we're in a tight spot here, without a doubt.
And not to make this more difficult, but there is the possibility that you could delay one of these instead of 27 into 29, into 28, and take something from 28 and put it into 29, as long as your math worked, right? I think there are projects in 28 that I don't believe are going to be ready in 28. I don't want to name them today because I don't want to have that discussion, but there is that possibility, yes? Again, as long as the math works. Like, I'm not trying to, like, you know, if we're taking a $16 million project out and there's a $16 million or two $8 million in 28, we could theoretically do that cascading.
Correct. Given the lack of contingency funding in federal fiscal year 28, we would then likely need to then have this discussion to move 28 into 9 and then select that which is in 29 that would no longer be there.
Yeah, well, yeah, my question presumes that the MPO seems to be navigating towards the new projects, at least some of them aren't going to get funded. Whether that's the case or not, we haven't voted yet, so maybe that won't be the case. But I'm sensing some kind of idea that that's what should happen. Other comments, questions, issues? Does anybody want to add to or delete from Eric's list of, hey, we'd like to hear more from Ipswich, Weston, and Woburn? Is that what we said? So let me see the other list. All right, now go back one again. Okay, so shouldn't we just ask all of them? Yeah, I don't want you to speak to it now because see, my whole point is two of the people of here are on this board and we didn't say we want to look at their projects again, all right? And I don't actually want you to tell me today because it's not fair that, again, board members can tell me today and the other three, although they could have shown up today, okay? Right? And I'm not, again, I don't want to delay Boston. I don't want to delay Everett. But I'm not sure that it's,
Fair enough.
right? I'm not sure it presents well if every time we do this, and this time it happens to be Everett and Boston, but every time we do this, we tend to think that we know enough about our projects that we don't necessarily have to have this discussion. So, so I don't think we're going to get to any of your votes today, right? But, so do we want these presentations to come to, we have an acronym for the TIP committee now, we call it TIPPER, is that true?
Yeah.
All right,
Tipper.
cool. Do we
It's the Tipper.
do we
Do
want
it for the Tipper.
these, and again, I would not, so, just to make this clear, I would not suggest Somerville come. Their project is so big that either we're in or we're not, and we may, the fact that they don't come, we may still decide to solve the problem with their money, or not their money, but their project, but there's no reason for them to come and talk to us again. But I would suggest that everybody else on this list should be invited to come to either Tipper or us, because one of these projects, or possibly more than one of these projects, is going to be either delayed into 28, delayed into 29, or cut from the TIP. Is that, I think that's where we are. Is that where we are? And I just need to know, do you want them to, and when is Tipper, the next meeting? Now I can't, I'm gonna say that over and over now.
It's this coming Thursday.
Next Thursday, 1 p.m. virtual.
And then our meeting is the week after.
Correct.
All right, so do we want them to come to Tipper, to come to us?
Yeah.
I mean, they can always come to us even if they've gone to Tipper. But how would people like to do this part of this work? Dennis?
I would suggest that we send it to Tipper, only because that's the committee that we've established to do these sort of things. And so we shouldn't kind of go around that, but I think we should also, during that discussion with them, is to suggest they come to the full board meeting also, just to, to cover your bases. I was just going to ask one question, if I could, Mr. Chair, about the Weston project. Ethan, do you know if the town meeting vote is if it's denied, is that a no-go for the project if that is defeated at town meeting?
My understanding, and Highway Division, feel free to weigh in because you guys are more in touch with the scope of work than I am, but my understanding is that without the ability to acquire right-of-way there, all of those items would cause severe scope issues. Could not move forward.
If I could add through the chair, and I don't have all the specifics, but if the town meeting is to acquire property and it's not voted to approve, then the project is stalled at a minimum, because the town does have to acquire the property for the project. If the town meeting is for the design contract with their designer, and the money isn't approved there either, then the project is stalled. So, I mean, I'm speculating a little bit, but that's generally my consensus, and I have that the town meeting is for right-of-way and potentially for contract with their designer, so.
Right. I would just note that I think Ethan previously said that they are concerned with getting some of this right away for the bike path and may therefore be scoping the bike path out of their project, right? So lots of things can happen at town meeting that stall a project but don't necessarily kill a project. So I without knowing more, but they should come and talk to that to Tipper. Other questions? Yes, Jen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ethan, could you go back to the slide with the schedule? Because I think my concern with asking folks to come to the Tipper is that I think we're on a pretty tight timeline, and I know staff was hoping for some direction today. We also did reach out to all of the project proponents and ask them to come to the previous Tipper meeting, and the vast majority of them did. So I guess I just, I wonder if we could maybe, I don't know, if we have the information we need today, or if we could at least make a provisional type of motion that unless we hear more, from at the next meeting, we're going to go forward with a certain kind of scenario.
Right, so that's an excellent point, right? So I think possibly sending them back to Tipper doesn't do what we want to do, right? I think if somebody wants to make a motion to take a specific project out, we can do that today. But then you can't just tell that community, come argue for your project, because if they come argue well, the other ones who are going to come out haven't been told to come. So I think what we need you to do is tell them they need to come present on their readiness, not how important their project is. I mean, they can if they want, but we want to know, is their project ready? Is their project going to be ready in 27? And why, and what are the steps? And we will ask them whatever questions we deem appropriate. And I think you probably need to make it you and I and Eric need to talk about whether that should even be just a separate agenda item, right? And again, I said it should be all of them. If people here are comfortable that it shouldn't be all of them and we want to cut it to a list, that's fine. We just need to decide that now, because otherwise we're going to default to everybody except Somerville. But if people want to add Somerville, we can add Somerville. So what would people, yes, Sarah, thank you.
Just looking for clarification when you're talking about asking for project readiness. I guess what I would assume they would say is we have 25% or 75% design plans, which we know, right? I guess I'm just trying to get to the point of, if we know who has 75% design plans and who does not have 25% design plans, we would know the outcome of that meeting if we were going to be voting on project readiness.
Yeah, you're right. Ethan, I think you have to tell them that I think we've identified what concerns we have, maybe, right? Like with Weston, it really is probably about their right-of-way and their scope. And so yes, I think you're right. Somehow we have to focus it more of like, I trust them all, okay? And when they say design is progressing and we're at 25, but we'll be at 75 in 2 months, okay. But that doesn't help us necessarily. I don't know how to do this. Jay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of points. One is I don't think we have a scenario currently that shows us not programming any new projects. Is that right?
The current scenario's primary objective is addressing fiscal constraint. It does currently assume the programming of the 3 projects that applied this year.
So
There's no alternative scenario at this time.
Okay, so I think one thing coming into the next MPO meeting would be helpful to have at least one, if not multiple, scenarios where we do not program new projects, and we have maybe through the Tipper meeting we'll have a few projects we might consider for pushing out to 29. The other point I wanted to make, and this is I think follows up Sarah's point a little bit, which is I'd be curious to hear from MassDOT as well about the likelihood that those projects will be on time, because it is not only just the municipality, but it is MassDOT through their review process that a lot of this gets determined. And very often we do hear from MassDOT that the project needs to be delayed for some odd reason. So I'd just be curious to have their input as well.
You mean on the projects that are on the, possibly can be cut out of the TIP list?
Correct.
Okay. John?
Of the list of projects that we're talking about not programming or moving out to 29, are any of those able to be split between 29 and 30 so that maybe we can program 1 or 2 new projects in 29 and not no new projects? Or do they all have to be fully funded in 29?
I think you're giving Ethan adjective, but I'll let him answer.
I mean, that is a good question. So one of those 7 projects that were listed there, and I will talk while I just try to push the button so we can get back to where we were. One of those 7 projects that was listed is Somerville's McGrath Highway project. And while reducing the funding in its current first advertising year may impact its ability to be delivered, there is a possibility that a reduction of funding in fiscal 27 could result in an increase in tandem in fiscal 29. That is the only project that is already AC'd across those 3 years. Currently, the project has $30.3 million in 29. It could be increased to 46, though again, that may either require a reduction in the advanced construction, likely for Rutherford Avenue, to offset, or the removal of those three projects that I alluded to earlier. Being Bellingham's project, Ipswich's project, and Sudbury's project, 2 of which had applied last year unsuccessfully, Sudbury, which is currently at 25%.
But so none of the, like, just for example, Woburn, you couldn't do 10 million in 29 and 7 million in 30, right?
Without,
Just, I'm picking rough numbers.
that I do not know without seeing the project schedule, as advanced construction is meant to represent, funding spread to reflect its delivery. A year without funding, I don't think has a precedent in the tip right now. So I would need to verify that with OTP and how that works.
All right, other comments? Other questions? You can do anything you want at this point.
I mean, in a minute, I would like to hear from John in Woburn, but I think, we have Everett here today. We have Woburn came here. We don't have Weston. We don't have Ipswich. I do feel a little uncomfortable. Like if we made a decision to push Weston out without actually having them today, I wouldn't mind saying let's really encourage these folks to come to the Tipper committee. And like for one thing, I'd like to know what is Weston thinking about their project. If they are in fact dropping the bicycle path component to it, that was actually one of the pieces that I really like about the project. And in fact, we've had conversations with like Natick about potentially extending that along Route 30 into Natick. And so I'd like to know if that is actually the case. And so, yeah, like more information. I just don't feel comfortable today. If someone made a motion to push that project out, I would feel uncomfortable about taking a vote on that today. So I do feel like having a little bit more information, a little more, engagement, in that meeting from MassDOT about their thoughts in terms of readiness, I think would be helpful, and then we could bring that information to the next meeting.
So with regard to Weston, I just would like to clarify that the removal of the bike path was not what was stated so much as they are currently reevaluating it or considering reevaluation of it to adjust it. It could be de-scoped to a lane for compliance with those healthy transportation initiatives. The exact text that I received from the town engineer was that modifications to the shared use path may be altered from what was presented at the design public hearing, and the town needs to consult with their landscape architect and their design team to address any issues that could also entail tree removals, which were yet another right-of-way concern by abutters.
Thank you for correcting my misstatement.
My other question, Ethan, is I know you were interested in some guidance on the other aspects of the TIP in the earlier years. It does feel like those issues are really like they're not like they don't impact, and this decision in 27 doesn't impact. Like they're not related. Like they're very much separate issues, right?
Given the lack of ability to further accelerate projects to fiscal 26, and the current scenario only has surplus in 25, given no projects can accelerate to 25,
yeah,
it is isolated somewhat.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess my feeling is a lot of those, questions of what we do in those early years. I don't know. I feel like I have a question about a few of those projects, but I don't think they're as challenging as this situation is.
Sandy?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm glad you brought that up, Eric. Thank you. I just did want to reinforce that it would be very helpful to the T's internal project planning, capital planning processes if we were able to get some clarity today on where some of those projects stand. I know that we have limited time left and this board has a lot to consider, but I did want to suggest that maybe we could move to that at some point.
So I'm not doing that today, with all due respect to the T and Sandy. If people want to try to do that, we can try to do that, but I'm not going to stay here and do this. We were getting your list on the 11th. We'll have that answer to you long in advance, I think, hopefully.
Quick clarification, that's a different list, though.
Yeah.
That's the you said with the fill-in projects.
Yeah, I know.
Just the two- okay.
I know, but so I guess here's the question. If the MPO said, no, we're not giving you the money for I don't know, pick one of them, Reading. I think there's Reading on there. Does that have a large impact on your CIP process?
So Reading is one of the ones that the MPO had already made a previous commitment to.
So which ones are we talking about?
Fitchburg is one of the new projects. They're very similar conceptually projects. I think the answer is yes. I would call on one of my colleagues from the CIP team. I know Glenn Geiler is here. I don't know if there's anybody else here who can speak to that in more detail as to how that would impact the process. I think it's I think our top priority for addressing would actually be Central, the elevator project, because that's something that had a cost increase that we've been given a clear indication we really need to cover. But we would appreciate any consideration the board can give to any of the projects. Obviously, the list that we've presented here gives the board options, and we know that it covers more. The total request is significantly more than is available. So we wanted to make sure the board was presented with options here.
Okay, so if people want to talk about that, let's finish this. I've got to call people who've had their hands up, and then if people want to talk about that, we can talk about that. John Cashel.
Thank you again and for your indulgence and allowing me to speak. This is my third time. I'm trying to put together exactly what I want to say. This particular project for Woburn has been planned for since the 80s, and I was the planning director from 85 in Woburn until 2001. And 23 years later, after being involved with the MPO with MAPC for many years in the 80s and 90s, and then National Regional Planning Commission, the Merrimack Regional Planning Commission in Southern New Hampshire, I do realize the importance of trying to stay on the tip as opposed to being deprogrammed. And, on behalf of the previous administration of Woburn, I'd like to apologize for this project not moving forward and at least getting to the 25% stage, at this point in time, after so many years. But we do have a new mayor. He's a hands-on mayor, wants to get a lot accomplished. He's at the peak of his game. He asked me to come back to be the planning director, the new planning director, or the new planning director in Woburn. And this is the top priority project for Woburn to accomplish. And if it's a matter of Woburn, under the circumstances, being pushed back to 28 or 29, we would deeply appreciate the MPO's consideration in that regard and allow us to do that. We are fully committed to fully designing and paying for the design of this project so that when it is ready for funding, we're going to give 100% design project to the state for implementation. And that's really the emphasis I want to bring out this morning in this discussion. Please consider that, we have a new mayor. We're ready to do this project and not delay it as any further. And we do apologize as a community for the delay that has gone on with this project thus far. But that is going to cease from this point forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn Diggins.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize my hand was back up. Well, I actually wanted to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, well.
No, go ahead if you want to. I'm sorry. If you want to speak, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead. It's a little bit off this topic right now, but I did want to get this in before we adjourn, and that is I wanted to discuss one element of the community connections, and that is regarding the on-demand. I just wanted some information about that in order to help, I think, give us some guidance. We can keep all the programs, but I just really want us to think about how we're going to handle the on-demand micro transit projects, because they're costing a lot, and I think because it's community connections, it's going to lose its funding in 3 years, right, Mr. Chair?
Yes, it's 3 years.
Yeah. So then we're in a situation where we'll have a high cost fee, and then we'll be debating, what to do maybe in the second year. So I just would like for us to think about how we think about these projects being overall, and so keep it on the list, but I'm just making a request to the group that we have further deliberation on that, probably after the tip, but at some point soon after. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. I think Chris Hart has his hand up. Chris, do you have your hand up? All right, maybe not. I just need to let everybody know, we're getting kicked out of this room at 1 o'clock, okay? So there's another meeting at 1 o'clock. We probably should be out of here a little bit before 1. So just bear that in mind.
Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
So just going back to Sandy's point, we are in a bit of a pickle regarding Central Square. The city of Cambridge needs us to get the elevator project out to bid ASAP because that project has to be done before they redo Mass Ave. And so trying to get an answer on funding as soon as possible is critical to getting it out to bid in the next few weeks. So to the extent that the MPO can provide additional funding, that would greatly facilitate moving this project out to bid quickly.
Thank you, Chris. John Rockwell.
Thank you. John Rockwell from TEC. Can speak on behalf of the Ipswich project. We're the town's design consultant for the project. To an earlier comment, yeah, the project has been in the universe of projects for quite a while. The town ultimately selected a new consultant, TEC, to move the project forward. And we developed 25% resubmittal within the last year, received MassDOT comments on that submittal. And those comments led to expansion of improvements at one of the project intersections, which slightly delayed the project while we worked with the town to identify some additional design funding. So the town now is fully committed to moving the project forward. That design funding has been committed and ready to regain momentum on the project. The project was originally programmed, I believe, in FY24, and then with the last tip cycle pushed to FY26, and then with this tip cycle recommended to be moved to FY27. So on behalf of the town, we would strongly request that the project not be delayed any further. Our current schedule shows the ability to deliver the project in FY26, recognizing that if it's programmed in 27, that allows us even another year buffer. And in speaking with the MassDOT project manager as recently as today, he doesn't have any concerns about the ability to deliver the project within that time frame.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Jen?
I'd like to get to kind of a clarity on our next steps on this point. So I guess I will motion that we invite the communities listed here to come to the Tipper meeting and make it clear to them that that is their opportunity to make a case directly related to their readiness and the kind of besides the numbers of like what % design you are at, like what's actually going on there, and that we kind of empower the Tipper committee to make a recommendation on that to this board the following week. Yeah, that's my motion.
Thank you. Motion made. Is there a second? There's a second. Any discussion? On that motion, oh yes, Sandy?
I would just volunteer that if we want the MBTA, could also bring more information to that meeting about our CIP process, since there was some interest from the chair and others in hearing more about that. And also, the scenarios that are presented here for our projects reflected the amount of funding we understood to be available last week at the TIPper meeting, and we can update it and prioritize to reflect the updated information as well.
Thank you, Sandy. Yes, Jen?
Just to clarify, I guess I was under the impression that you wanted us to continue considering the MBTA projects at this meeting?
I think we would be thrilled if that happened, but we understand the time constraints and the amount of time that it has taken already, and are happy to put it off at the board's discretion.
So Sandy, mindful of your comment and Chris's comment, is it helpful if we all shake our head and say, yes, we're 100% okay? You can definitely assume there's $4 million in our program for the elevators that need to get reconstructed.
I think we were asking for 5, but yes, I think that would be very helpful.
But the five includes a match, and the 5 includes the match, and the match is always yours, not ours.
Yes.
Yes. So Sandy, if anybody here objects to this, jump up and down. Sandy, we're good for that $4 million. Okay? Yeah, we are good for that $4 million.
On behalf of the MBTA, we thank the board.
And I did not mean to imply we weren't. We're good. All right. Yes, John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify, Jen, are we requesting all the communities to come to the next meeting, or just the 3 that were previously mentioned?
I guess I was given the chair's suggestion that for the appearances of fairness, to invite all to come. Many of them are already, I think, will be present at that time, so yeah.
So did I get a second? You seconded that motion,
second,
right?
yeah.
So motion having been made and seconded, let's call the roll.
Calling the roll, David Muller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Danny Johnston,
Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Brassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Jed Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald, Jay Monty,
Yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Chute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Melissa Tentopoulos, Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Tom O'Rourke,
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
the motion carries.
Thank you. Ethan, I just want to again say for the record, what a wonderful job you and everybody who supported you to get this done did today. Okay? I would also like to really commend the TIPper and all the work they've done and their willingness to take on additional work. It's thank God we created that committee and that you took it on, Jen.
I don't think that we've had all the votes of the TIPper accepting all this additional play.
As a TIPper member, you're just noting that for the record? All right, is there anything else to come before the MPO today? Our next meeting is 2 weeks from today?
2 weeks from today.
And it's here in person.
It'll be here in person.
Hybrid.
And hybrid.
Making decisions.
Making decisions, and then we will have a meeting on the 11th that'll make more decisions. It's virtual. And then the 18th is also virtual, and it is the final actual vote to release the TIP. So the next 4 weeks, or 4 out of the next 5 weeks, or whatever how that works out, is all TIP all the time. Please come if you can, either in person or virtual, and I promise we will get to the T. Anything else?
Just one quick question. What are the decisions that will be made on April 11th at the new meeting?
So on the 11th is actually when the MBTA will bring their part of the TIP that's funded with transit funds, not Flex Highway, because they have a process that they have to go through. They've got a board, they've got to preview theirs for the board. We will bring the highway statewide side of the TIP, and then the RTAs will bring their transit tip too. So that's what's happening on the 11th. On the 4th, we're finishing all of this stuff that we didn't finish today. And then on the 18th, we're wrapping it all up and putting it out on the street. So did I get a motion to adjourn? I didn't, I don't think.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everyone, and we've been asked to vacate the room relatively efficiently, if you don't mind. There are additional snacks outside as a motivating factor.